Cults have always seemed to capture the attention of the public in a way that nothing else can. For whatever reason, we are all fascinated by them, on some level. Maybe it's because we can't imagine how the cult's members don't see how obvious it is that they're being taken advantage of. Or maybe the archetype of the cult leader is what draws us in. Either way, there's a big difference between being fascinated by the concept of cults and being drawn into the manipulations of cultists themselves. In this video, we're going to take a deep dive into the realm of historic and modern cults alike, between the Manson Family, Heaven's Gate, the People's Temple, and many more. There's plenty to learn about. So, as you can probably tell by the title of this video, today we're going to look at my top 10 facts about cults. I'm not sure why, but I've always found the Heaven's Gate cult to be particularly fascinating, and also particularly creepy. The members of Heaven's Gate all collectively committed suicide in 1997, and each member was found wearing tracksuits and matching Nike sneakers, which I've always found to be odd, even for cultists. The belief system of Heaven's Gate was some strange blend of Christian theology and the belief in extraterrestrials. Heaven's Gate members believed that their founder was the second coming of Jesus Christ, and that God was an alien and they were living in the end times. When astronomers disclosed to the public that a comet named Hale-Bopp was inbound for a relatively close pass by Earth, the Heaven's Gate cultists somehow determined that a UFO was following this comet, and as it passed by Earth, they would all need to commit suicide in order to shed their earthly forms and ascend into the heavens via UFO. I genuinely don't understand how a bunch of seemingly functional adults can come to such a specific conclusion with zero evidence, but they all apparently believed it because they all followed through. While that is obviously pretty crazy, one other remarkable thing about this cult is that they were essentially the first cult of the internet age. They built their own Heaven's Gate website and used it to attract new members, and the group even sustained themselves financially with a reasonably successful business building web pages for other companies. Speaking of Heaven's Gate, fact 2 is about them as well. Heaven's Gate was founded and led by Bonnie Nettles and Marshall Applewhite. However, in the mid-80s, Nettles died of cancer, leaving Applewhite to lead the group alone. Before that death occurred, Nettles and Applewhite always told the cult's members that they wouldn't have to physically die to be beamed up into space to their version of the afterlife. They were always told that they could take their physical bodies, which they called their containers, with them. However, Applewhite amended that aspect of their teachings in order to explain the death of Bonnie Nettles. Since she died, Applewhite told the group that death actually was necessary to be beamed up into the alien afterlife, and that they would receive new bodies in what they called the next level, aka the afterlife. This will be the final fact about Heaven's Gate. I was going to make this fact about some other cults since facts 1 and 2 already covered Heaven's Gate, but this fact was too crazy to leave out. The mass suicide of the Heaven's Gate members took place over the course of 3 days, according to the coroner's report. Apparently, the members began killing themselves using a combination of phenobarbital, alcohol, hydrocodone, and a bag over their heads. They had a strict method already planned out beforehand that dictated how their deaths would take place. It was called the routine, and involved a group of 15 members killing themselves with the assistance of 8 other members. Next, a second group of 15 would die, also assisted by 8 other members, and so on. Since there were 39 victims total, at the end there were 9 people left who had yet to pass away. These final 9 took their own lives without the help of anyone else, since all but those 9 had already died. Honestly, the whole thing is pretty disturbing. You might ask, why do people even join cults in the first place? While every individual cult member probably has their own unique reasons for doing what they do, there are some frequent commonalities. For instance, low self-esteem is often seen in those joining cults. Lacking self-confidence and having low self-esteem makes one more receptive to the manipulation and psychological tactics employed by cult leaders. Cults also often satisfy the natural human desire for absolute answers. Religion does this as well. It's only natural for any human to seek answers to the common questions about existence and the origins of humans and the universe. Cults often exploit that natural tendency. In addition, cults will frequently love bomb new recruits. To love bomb someone means to constantly flatter them or shower them with compliments in order to get their brains to associate the cult and its members with positive feelings. Unfortunately, many people are quite vulnerable to this style of manipulation. This particular cult has surprisingly not received much mainstream media attention over the years. It was called Conscious Development, aka the Texas Hypno Cult. It was pretty bizarre, and it was also connected to the mysterious deaths of numerous people. In the 1970s, Terry Hoffman developed this cult, which mostly revolved around her belief in so-called faith healing, New Age occultism, and Black Lords, which were energy-sucking alien entities who supposedly walked among us. This strange cult allowed Hoffman to talk her followers into giving her millions of dollars. Eventually, the members of this cult started rapidly dying. Conveniently, these deaths would usually occur right after the victim had signed their inheritance and insurance payouts over to Hoffman. This next cult is also relatively unheard of, for whatever reason. Founded in the mid-1950s by a British taxi driver, the Aetherius Society was a New Age religion with belief systems based on the idea that so-called cosmic masters, which were apparently entities from Venus and Saturn, were in control of the fate of humanity. This cult was heavily focused on prayer and what they called spiritually charging the earth to clear the way for the next master, who is supposedly a messiah who will descend to the earth in a flying saucer armed with magic more powerful than the combined materialistic might of all the armies, according to the founder. Truly bizarre stuff. This next cult was called the Order of the Solar Temple. The beliefs and activities of this cult involved a mixture of Christianity, UFOs, New Age philosophy, and Freemason rituals. This cult was mostly a peaceful organization at first, with some obviously unconventional beliefs, such as the idea that death is only an illusion, and that life continues after death on other planets. Eventually, the infant son of one of its members was accused of being the Antichrist, and subsequently sacrificed in one of the group's lodges. Shortly afterward, many people in the cult's inner circle committed mass suicide, while other members were found mysteriously shot or smothered to death, all dressed in their ceremonial robes. One of the most well-known cults in American history is the Manson Family, which was active in the late 60s and led by the infamous Charles Manson. The ideology of the Manson family revolved around the hippie subculture of the 1960s, and Manson himself often gave potential female followers LSD to aid in his ability to manipulate them. Charles Manson predicted a so-called race war in the United States, and much of the Manson family cult revolved around preparing for such a war. After hearing the White Album by the Beatles, Manson became convinced that the Beatles themselves were trying to covertly communicate with him through the lyrics of their music, especially the song Helter Skelter. Unfortunately, Manson treated his followers extremely poorly, often exploiting them sexually and making threats of violence against them in order to control their behavior. Ultimately, members of the Manson family cult committed a series of highly publicized murders before Manson himself was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. He died in 2017. The People's Temple is one of the most well-known cults in history, likely as a result of the massive number of deaths that their leader, Jim Jones, ultimately caused. In total, 918 people died in Jonestown in 1978. All but 2 of those people died from cyanide poisoning in a mass suicide/mass murder scenario. According to the reports from survivors of this horrific event, many of those who died that day were injected with the toxin against their will, so it's impossible to know exactly how many of those deaths were truly suicide. Disturbingly, there is a well-known audio tape of the entire event unfolding. The tragedy at Jonestown constituted the single greatest loss of life of American civilians until 9/11. Finally, the last cult I'll mention in today's video is called Chen Tao, otherwise known as the True Way cult. This 160-member group was created by a former professor who by all accounts was mentally insane. He had a number of bizarre beliefs, including that the universe is 4.5 trillion years old, our solar system was created by nuclear war, every human being has 3 souls, and that humanity has been saved on 5 separate occasions by God descending from the heavens in a flying saucer. However, this cult fell apart after a prediction by its founder failed to materialize. In 1998, the founder of Chen Tao predicted that God would appear on a single TV channel in North America at 12:01 a.m. on March 31st. This was supposed to occur regardless of whether or not you had cable, which I think is a humorous detail. Obviously, the followers of this cult became disillusioned when this prediction proved inaccurate. Well, that's all I've got for today's video. I could have gone into far greater detail on any one of these individual cults, and maybe I'll do so in a future video, because there are many more crazy aspects of each cult I mentioned here. Also, I've got lots of other content on the way, so if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and check out my other videos. If you want, feel free to comment on this video to let me know what kinds of content you'd like to see from me in the future. Anyway, thanks for watching.